species with some level of shrub clearance. But if you cut too much the shrubs, or you clear cut the shrubs, you lose this biodiversity. And I took mycorrhiza as an example, but you can apply it to many other taxa. Main threats to the montados nowadays, of course, since the cork still is the main product, the most valuable product in cork-oak montados, not the whole of montados, the market value of cork influences the interest of the owners to keep these trees or not, and to maintain the system. So this is a threat because, as you know, market values have nothing to do with real life. It's all speculative, and so it's very sad that a system like this depends on such a I don't know how to call it, but an unpredictable, at least, criterion. Of course, another threat is that from a multi-purpose system, the trend now of the owners to increase the income or to have less concerns about their lands is to pass from a multi-purpose system to a single-use system. Either cattle raising, cork production, whatever. So just focusing on one product and leaving all the rest. And this, of course, will have consequences for maintaining this mosaic, this spatial and temporal mosaic of microhabitats in the system. Of course, like in many other places, land abandonment. It's a bit linked with what I just said. People tend to leave the countryside. They don't want to work in these kind of places anymore. They go to the towns. And with the abandonment comes shrub encroachment. So shrubs tend to grow and to invade, so to say, these systems. And with these shrubs comes another danger, which is wildfire. So the more wood so this becomes a typical Mediterranean scrub system. So fire becomes a real threat. On the other side, there is also intensification of production. So with the plantation of new oaks just for cork production. So it becomes like a pine forest or a timber forest normally, a normal timber forest. Breeding heavy cattle here. As I told you, traditional cattle was not cows, and now cows is what apparently is more profitable. So it's a very big problem because they prevent natural regeneration. They compact the soil. They increase. Well, this you will study probably. They will disturb the nutrient balance and so on. And of course the general threat of climate change, which will have surely effects on these systems. So this is the general view of the system. If you have questions, I don't know, perhaps in the end, so because perhaps I will, well, if you have questions you can put them. I will talk now about the tree. So, questions? No. Okay, cork-oak. So it's a Mediterranean species, and it behaves very similarly to other Mediterranean species. So those who are from the Mediterranean regions will recognize these patterns. It's typical of the coastal Western Mediterranean basin, so Iberian Peninsula and Northern Africa mainly. It's a long-lived species. It can live up to 300 years. In these systems it doesn't grow very tall, about maximum 20-25 meters. It always has these large trunks, large main branches. It has a deep tap root, very thick and long lateral roots, and a very large fine root system. it is able to cope with low water and nutrient availabilities, and with high temperatures, like many other species in the Mediterranean. It has a very high resprouting ability, and the cork naturally is a protection against many atmospheric hazards and fire. So if there is a fire, and well, not a very intense fire, the cork protects the inner part of the trunk, and after the fire, the tree has the ability to resprout from metacornic buds. Okay. I studied cork-oak for many years, so I will tell you a bit about its phenology and nutrient balance in the tissues. It grows. The main growth is in spring. Radial, so the trunk starts to grow first. Then the male inflorescences develop. New shoots began to develop. Meanwhile, the old leaves are falling. The leaf longevity in this tree, in this species, is little more than 1 year. Whole oak has a long leaves are longer lifespan in whole oak. And then new leaves and female catkins develop. And all this occurs for one tree in a very short period of time, but it is not very synchronous among trees. So you can have an montado. You can see trees in different phenological states. Not now, it's already perhaps too late here, but I still see some with a yellowish color, which might mean male inflorescence still. Yes. Fruits. So all this growth stops. The crown growth stops. Sometimes in autumn you have a second growth period if the conditions are suitable. If not, it doesn't grow in autumn. And then trunk growth, radial growth also decreases or even ceases during summer, and then restarts at a very lower rate than in spring in autumn. And about this, she will talk about it, radial growth. I won't go into it anymore. I just wanted to link this phenology with the nutrient in the leaves and in shoots, the stems, the young shoots, the terminal stems, varies, accompanies the seasonal patterns that maximum nutrient content in the leaves usually happens in the summer. Before the new leaf growth before the next spring, there is some retranslocation of nutrients to the stems, and then the new leaves appear with the new pattern of development. The thing that we found was that the resorption capacity of these leaves is not as high as I found in other species, and so it seems that the tree must really rely on a on an increased availability of nutrients in the soil somehow to keep cycling these,
what is the percentage, Graça?
Sorry?
What was the percentage of recovery?
About 30, not over, not 40, 30, not 30. Over 30. And we also made a long study of litter decomposition, which is in this page. And this is not published. This was just first study about this. Mainly we kept litter bags with leaves for 3 years in the soil like this, in 3 different montados, which differed in management intensity. So we really wanted to see if there was any effect of the management on the composition. Well, as you can see, more or less, is that the heavily used montado appeared to have faster decomposition, which led us to think that okay, the tree layer is growing slowly. If the nutrients are fastly, very rapidly lost to the system, there might be some imbalance here, and well, there might be problems with very heavily managed montados. So this was about, if you have any further questions about the nutrients, nutrients were not really my focus, so I don't really know much about it, but if you have any questions, I will try to answer. Last, I want to make the link to Augusta and speak about cork harvesting. Of course, because cork is the main product, it is important to address the process and the consequences. This was my point in my thesis. What were the effects of harvesting on the tree? Because no one seemed to care very much about it. They just wanted to take the cork, and they didn't want to know if the tree could really cope with it and how. And so this was the focus of my PhD thesis. Cork-oak has a very unique characteristic. It is the only species that is able to regrow a new bark, because the cork really is the bark, to regrow a new bark after we take the first one. And because of that capacity, you can have these very old trees in a montado, and you can even, about how many cork harvestings you can have per month? 10 to 12 harvestings per tree throughout its life. In Portugal, you can only harvest every 9 years, which is logical, because until then you don't have enough cork to take out, or with enough thickness to take. And it is done during late spring, early summer, the extraction of the cork. This, of course, when you take out the cork, when you take out the cork, you can imagine, okay, imagine you take the bark, so the living tissues become exposed to the air, and all the bad things can happen, right? So it's a vulnerable time for the tree. And the tree has developed mechanisms to, of course, rapidly try to heal, to cover the wound, because this is a big wound. I don't know if you noticed in the video you were shown in the center. They take, it's a big layer that is out, so it's a big surface that is exposed, and it is important for the tree to rapidly heal it. Why? Because from this open surface it loses water. It's very close to the transport system of the tree, so remember, it's in the end of spring, early summer, it's very hot. The air to the deficit air to whatever. The difference is very high, so the evaporation demand is very high. The tree loses water from all this surface in a time when water is very scarce, so it's a very big problem for the tree. I want you all to cry for the tree, that's why I'm telling you this. at the leaf level, trees and plants can close stomata if they don't want to lose water. But the trunk has no stomata, so it will lose water forever unless it is stopped. Sorry?
And this is cork.
Calojan is the cork canyon.
Yeah, and cork and sugar for their inside. So this is the. So you can cut if you want to see.
And if you have any detailed questions about this, I or Augusta can answer you. I will not go into detail. I just added a scheme because I thought of her. Perhaps she wants to talk about this. This Augusta has. So I never worked in Companhia del. I never worked in this montado, I worked in other places, but she has worked here for a very long time. She has a very long term study on cork-oaks. Now, it's when, so if you look at this drawing, the cork cambium grows cell layers inwards and outwards.
Yeah.
And as I told you, it's during spring that the radial growth occurs. This means it's when these cell layers close to the cambium are softer. They are still not suberized. And so they are weak. And they allow you to take easily the cork plank. If you try to harvest cork in another time of the year, you will not take only the cork, you will also take the cork, the phloem and the cambium, the vascular cambium, and you will kill the tree probably. That's why. But I was waiting, I didn't say it on purpose because I was waiting for that question. Thank you.
I have one question.
You have one question, okay.
Did you find any relationship with the harvest surface? And,
Yes,
and the
there is,
response?
yes. Yes, I didn't speak about that, I forgot. So it's legally required in Portugal, not only that you only take cork from one tree every 9 years, at least. You are not forced to take it, you can leave it if you want, but you need to leave it for 9 years. And not as much as you want. It depends, the amount you take from each tree depends on the size of each tree. Basically, there is a coefficient, an index that you must apply when you go to a tree and decide where to cut and take the plank out. And when I studied the effects of cork stripping, I found some relationship between what we call the intensity of harvesting. So the more cork you take, the more intense is the harvesting. There is, for very high intensities of harvesting, there is stronger effect. The tree takes longer to recover normal stomatal conductance, for example. I don't know about the growth because, as you all probably know, research projects only last 2-3 years, and this tree needs at least 9 years for me to see the effects of growth and so on. So I could not really see that, but I think there will be an reduced growth.
We find like agro-silvo-pastoral
Yes.
system with few trees, but this is not so few. Like
Yes, that's what I told you. Few is very relative. It can be from 20 to 200.
okay.
And it all depends on the use it has been having through time with the owners it has had. It's also true that if you go more continental, if you go inland in Portugal, you will see less, the trend is less trees, less density, lower density. Here it's higher density also because here you have cork-oak. Inland you mainly have holm oak because cork-oak doesn't like continental climate very much. And so if you have cork-oak, the main product is cork. So it's all for the owners. It's interesting to keep, if you have a young regenerating cork-oak, it's interesting for you to let it live because it will give you cork. But if it's a home oak inland, perhaps you don't like it so much because you need more open land for your crops or for hunting or for whatever you want the thing. That's one of the reasons. But that's a very good question. Yes.
Yeah, so does it make sense to fertilize the montado to increase production?
Yes, when you have pastures, well, if you use your land for cattle mainly, or yes,
For the
mainly
trees.
for cattle.
For the trees.
No, not for the trees. The trees really, it's just come and take. No, you don't really have to care about them.
Would it speed up the recovery of the tree if during that difficult time you water it and fertilise it to allow?
I didn't hear the first part
Sorry,
of it.
if you water and
No.
fertilise during that time when the tree's under stress, you don't think that helps?
No. I can even tell you that when, because this is all legally supervised if you want, or it should be at least, when we have very dry years, it may become, you may not, legally, the agriculture ministry may tell you that it's forbidden to harvest cork in that year. So it means that only in the following year you can harvest. In very dry years it happens. But you do not
beneficial for the tree. It would be beneficial for the tree in those times
to do what?
to water or put fertilizer.
No,
after stripping.
No, I
it's more
don't think so. No, because the problem here is that it's losing water. Even if you give it, it's
In and out.
yeah. I mean, what I saw, I studied different montados. Once close, well, not far from here, where the water table is high. You see that the water availability is high for those trees. So it's not, they don't need more water. They can reach the water. The problem is that they cannot hold the water. So watering it, I don't think it would be useful. And nutrients, I don't see where nutrients or fertilization would help. Yes, Christina. She's having
There are some experiments that I don't know the place, but I've been listening to those experiments where they've been watering and fertilizing cork-oak to be able to take the first cork earlier. I think they
but
can.
that's another thing.
Yes, so I'm asking another question. So to take the first cork earlier. And I don't really remember, so I think it's 30 years to the first cork. How many years? And I think they take 8 years. Yeah, 8 years. The numbers were not really in my head. But so if you reduce from 30, which is a generation, to 8, when you still can see in your own life the profits, what do you think about it? So because
This is a pending discussion between.
okay, so but this is it? Of course, there's not a lot of information about it yet. But
Yes.
what you think like could happen, both of you, because in fact you are both experts on that.
The thing is that we would like to have a project to test that.
Both on the tree and the quality of cork, of course.
Yes, both. Because it's not clear if we have a tree growing under better conditions, if the cork will be better. It's not clear. That relationship is not clear. So what might be good for the tree might not be good for the cork, or is good for the cork. We don't know. And in that regard, it's all for me. It's all a matter of how resilient the tree is to recurrent harvesting. Because, as I told you, they take cork out every 9 or 10 years, but no one really studied in a clear way the effect it has on the tree, because we don't, for one thing, we don't have controls. It's very seldom that we have a tree that is not harvested
Close to the site.
close to the one we want to see the effects on. So it's difficult to evaluate the effects without this sort of controls. And it's all it always always goes to that point: how resilient is the tree? Because we won't see the immediate effect. Okay, if it's a very strong problem, a very hard harvesting, perhaps you see immediately, but normally you won't see the effects until a very long time afterwards, and you won't be able to see cause-consequence relationship. That's the problem, is that one. And because it's a very humanized...
Maybe longevity could be also a problem?
Yes, I think it could. It could be. So, please let Augusta speak now. She has a very nice thing to show you.
If you, I like very much Graça, but I disagree completely with her in several issues, main issues for me. So, are you ready to have new information, relevant information? So,
a forest engineer.
For a forest engineer, that I see the tree has the most resilient to cork harvesting. So this tree is extremely
I didn't say
resilient
it wasn't.
to cork harvesting.
I said I don't know how much.
So you can put water in the tree and fertilize the tree, that it will turn from 30 years to 8 years to start producing cork. So the limit for why? Because the minimum limit for you to take the cork is to have in your tree, by law, is to have in your tree 22 centimeters of diameter, which corresponds more or less in perimeter about 70 centimeters. So if you have over cork 70 centimeters, you can harvest the tree. So it's what happened in that region. So the owner had olive grove, and then it had with the intensive olive growth, it was fertilized and with water. And okay, we have more lines to put water in the field, so a nice land to put some cork-oak, so let's put water in the cork-oak. So they grown absolutely incredible.
But they were young cork-oaks, right?
Young cork-oak. So it was the first harvest that you take, that is virgin cork, that is in my sample here. This cork, as you can see, it's very different from the cork that you have in here, that is mature tree, so it's very irregular, and you cannot use this cork for making cork stoppers. So you harvest cork for 25 traditional cork-oak woodland, and this cork, it will be to triturate and to make agglomerate of cork, so small granules of cork. So after 9 years, you take another cork that you call it segundeira, and after 9 years, this cork also is not for cork stoppers. So you have 34 years without cork for cork stoppers, and cork stoppers is responsible for 80% of major income in cork industry. So if you have many products, you can see you can see many things made of cork, but cork stoppers, it's about 80% of the major income from cork industry. So you produce cork in the trees for cork stoppers, natural cork stoppers. You don't produce cork in the trees for dresses and for umbrellas and not for nothing. So you have to have thickness, and you have to wait 3 harvests to produce the first, that we call it Amadia cork, for taking the first cork stoppers. And the thickness of cork, as you can see here, so this is in the tree like this, and the thickness of cork is to punch these cork stoppers. So natural cork stoppers come here like this. So if you don't wait 9 years in Portugal, you don't have thickness enough to do this type of cork stoppers, that is about 24 millimeters for 45 millimeters height, and this traditional, and these cork stoppers, natural cork stoppers, are the real gold product for cork industry. About fertilization, use fertilization in young trees when you are putting a new forest stand. You fertilize. You fertilize with ammonia, with phosphorus, and o amônio e o exactly. So this is, and you can make this till 6 years. You can make fertilizations. One study for fertilization in mature trees. Mature trees are the ones that you can see here that produce cork. Is only to speed the cork growth. Okay, and it's done in the middle of the cycle, because you cannot put any mobilization immediately after harvesting or 2 years before you harvest. So that's 4 years you cannot enter here and put nothing in the soil. So it's fertilization, it's more or less in the middle of the cycle, and the curve for cork growth, as Graça told you, as after harvesting, the tree immediately needs to invest in cork, but because cork, it will isolate the trunk that is losing water. So it's the cork rings are extremely large. This is cork rings. It's very visible cork rings, and the first rings are this one. The first rings that are created is this one, and this is our youngest. So this is the inner part of the cork line. So the cycle of cork, you have an immediate great response for producing a cork ring, and then they going slow down, and the cork rings in the 7th or 8th year after cork harvesting is about 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, not more. So for a thickness of 3.5 centimeters. So this plot. It's about fertilization that
we are not in total disagreement, because what she explained was concerning new plantations and young trees. His question was about the stress of harvesting, and harvesting was on mature trees, and I was replying to hypothetical fertilization and watering in mature trees after harvesting, right?
It's in the middle of the cycle.
Okay. But of course I agree with her. Yes, it's done. If you plant cork oaks, you water them and you fertilize them. I don't know if that's for to speed up growth, probably.
Yes,
but
but
to ensure that they will survive.
How because you only can do fertilization in the middle of the cycle, the tree is on declining their cork growth. So you can see very small effects of fertilization in the cork growth. So it's not so cork growth depends, yes, from the climate. Okay, and this plot I would like to begin, but Rui is not here anymore. But I would like to say that this plot was installed in 1991 when I was making my graduate. It was in the year that I graduate. I began to come here with one professor from Instituto Superior de Agronomia that is retired now and longer time ago, and we put these dendrometers, and these dendrometers were in 50 trees. 50 trees that I represent here. So in these are the trees that we can see, the trees here, So it begins like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's almost in line because this montado is not a natural regenerated montado. Okay, it's a semi-natural regenerated montado. So it was planted in after the wheat campaign in 1938, 37, and afterwards they planted new trees here, and you can see the trees are almost in line. So it's from 1937, so it's more or less the result of that. So this is the alignment. So we are probably here in the line in the tree 4. So these are my permanent plots that I have been measured since 1991. Monthly measurements of dendrometers. Why dendrometers? Because when was in 1991 after harvesting, so in July 1991. After harvesting, we put this band dendrometers, and this band dendrometer expand as the tree grows, and you measure the increments. You can notice that we have now big trees, but over there we have smaller, relatively smaller trees. And we have already in this plot 3 consecutive harvests. So in 1991, then after 9 years we harvest in 2000, and then in 2012 we harvest again. Why 2012 and not 2009? Because for management plan reasons, this was the cork harvest in this part of the land was delayed 3 years. So what I am doing here, so it's measuring with the band dendrometers, and I can make this kind of data that I measure basal area increment. What the band dendrometer measures is together the wood growth and the cork growth. When you take the cork, you can subtract the wood growth. And what gives you this kind of curves? This kind of curves, here we are the harvesting years, and here we have the driest years. So we have here 3 extremely severe drought events, and we can see how the trees respond. This is the first cycle, this is the second. Here I have only to July and 15, so you can notice that we are here 2 years after, so I have more 2 years of this. And here we can see what Graça told us about. It was a peak. Every year you have a peak in this particular region in July and August. So these trees start to grow in April altogether, April, May, radial growth, and then they increase their growth, and till July and August they reach their peak. They don't stop to grow in summer. In this region, so it's my first approach. In this region, you don't have trees that stop their radial growth in summer. So then after June, July, August, they start declining. But you have years where they grow very, and they grow very small growth. Why is that? So it's because this tree, in this particular plot, they have they reach the water table. The water table here is about in the driest season, so between May to August, they are about 4 meters deep. So they have water, mainly these big trees, they have water all the summer. The dry season, so they have always water. So, but in extremely dry years, maybe the water table is deeper, so they don't grow as much as in normal years, but they don't stop to grow. But this is completely different from other region that I put another plot in Serra de Grândola. I think you have there that coitadinha. It's near, my plot is near, but it's not there. But it's the similar conditions that the Ribeira Abaixo. That is, the trees stop to grow in July and August. They don't grow. And now they begins to grow in September. So it's a completely different curve from that. I have here this plot that is from 1991 till now. I have one other plot that I installed in 2010, and the other is a pear plot in Herdade de Grândola, and there in here they continue to grow, and there they stop to grow. So I have the pair, the comparison between them. So after harvesting, you have so in July you harvest the cork. So the first complete year, so in July you harvest, then the phylogeny is created, then the winter the tree rests, and then in the next year in March, April, the tree starts to grow again. That it's not depends on the climate conditions, but the tree starts to grow very well to put their cork isolating trunk, and in the first 4 years the trees has large growth, then start to decline. It's what I am doing here. And so only one figures for you to understand what this, because Graça told me to add some numbers to her presentation, as I didn't know what was your formation. So basically the problem of the cork-oak woodlands is that we have, if you see here, you can see all the trees are, or a large part of these trees are all exploited. So you see very, very few trees that are not exploited. So it's a sustainability of the stand structure. So you don't have youngest trees to replace the oldest ones. So you have only 45 at the cork-oak woodland at national level. You have 45% of mature trees, so it's a big number. So the density is about 67. In here, the density is a little bit higher. It's about 80, but at national level, you have around 67 trees per hectare. Yeah. So, what's made a density, a total density? This is total density of trees in production. So this is the density of all the trees with virgin and new regeneration trees. So the canopy cover, this numbers is only to say to you that the cork-oak woodland, mainly in this part of the country, has about 6 square meters of basal area. That is about half of the optimum for this kind of forest. And this is what grows. This is for you to see that the virgin growth, that is the growth of the normal trees that were not harvested, is very, very similar to the wood growth of the tree, of the same tree. But when you harvest, you stimulate and you provoke the response of the tree that increases the growth rate of the cork rings. So you can have cork rings that put 3 and 5 millimeters per year. So Portugal is the first, at worldwide level, Portugal is the first world producer of cork-oak. So it's responsible for more than 50% of the cork, and it has only 30% of the cork-oak area in the world. But this is countries in the western part of the Mediterranean basin, and the North African countries. The North African countries are for instance, Algeria and Morocco and Tunisia. They have good quality cork, but they have a problem with the management of cork-oak woodlands. So in the 30s, Algeria was a colony of France, and it was a very, very threatened country for Portugal as a producing cork. So then Spain was the measure about cork industry. So, but the civil war put us in control. So we have the advantages because others do not have for some events were not able to continue to be the leaders. So I hope we maintain the leadership. And this is the final one. I'm not bringing the whole book because I didn't have the time. But this is the final one. You can see this is the cumulate growth. That you can see the tree started in July 91 with this and grows like this in the 9 years. And then you harvest and it drops out, and then it starts to begin. What is the red lines? The red lines are the trees that are dying, that died. This tree died. This tree died here. This died here. This died here.
How many trees died from the 50?
5.
5.
5,
5%.
6. It was the last one. Unfortunately, it was my major trees that died this year. That is over there.
They die when?
In March, because you cannot take pruning or harvesting. It's only allowed from November to March. So it was the last day of March. I was seeing if the tree starts to grow, but no, it died.
But what do you think is the reason? It's
now I'm with a team of researchers, young researchers, that we are making a work that is see how early signs for trees that are that are dying, and because this it was a very surprising result that we have. It's the importance of big trees for carbon balance. So these trees, when are big, they grow much than smaller trees. So they are very important in carbon balance. So I'm very sad with this one. And what we are trying to do is to see what trees are dying, and what are the trees that are dying, what are the trees that are growing more, and what are the trees that are growing less. And we are reaching very interesting results. That are not published yet, but soon, very soon. So if you, I leave this is for my youngest son, because it's only what I could make yesterday.
Can you
answer
give
your
us more
questions?
information about the 5 trees that died? Because there are just 5. So one it was big, and the other ones were also big.
Yes, when I put the map, I saw that it was in the higher classes. The
ones.
trees were in the with DAP diameter at breast height higher than 50 centimeters. So they are higher. But what makes the trees die, we don't find it yet because it's monthly. It's monthly diameters since 1991 with two harvests between. So